It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, December 2nd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that really did not like seeing Tyson Foerster go out like that.
Well, Forster, the team, all of it.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to Locked On Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 20 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. We are going to get to our Phantoms Tuesday report later in the show. Adam Yinning cleared waivers after being reactivated. So that's at least something we know about that. And
Yep.
we'll talk more about that team and what that means for Zamula and the other defensemen on future shows. We got to dive right into this Flyers loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins here. Yeah, the Tyson Foerster injury is, worse than the loss, obviously, in a lot of ways here. And, he scored the only goal of the game to
hmm
that point, and there had maybe been a momentum shift a little bit at that point as well. And I feel like the injury took a lot out of the Flyers, but it's also no excuse for some of the other play that happened.
No, I mean, I was in the Penguins locker room for a minute, and Sidney Crosby said you know, killing off most of the 5-on-3s gave him a boost. And yeah, I mean, the Flyers are
Yeah.
1 for 6 on the power play. Like,
Yep.
that's not on a Tyson Forster being out of the game. That's on them.
Yeah, like special teams was everything. And when you have,
Yes.
the rivalry and that adds to the chippiness of the game.
Yep.
And then what happens is that you get a lot of opportunities for power plays on both sides. Now, the Pens had 14 penalty minutes in the game, the Flyers with 8. I'm not really counting that last power play at the very end of the game because,
Right.
that was, 10 seconds. It was kind of a wash. But
Yep. Yep. Yep.
all of that being said, allowing the Pens to go 3 for 4 on the power play. I don't care if they're the top power play in the league. Like, your penalty kill should be able to withstand that.
Yeah, no question. I just felt the Flyers defense was bad. Dan Vladar, even from the start of the game, wasn't sharp. You could
Yeah,
see he was
little
a little
off.
little off. And again, that could be from the games played, short amount of time games played. Like, he's gonna start to get to that threshold where, we're in uncharted territory for him. So yeah, this was something where the Penguins definitely exploited some things, including that stretch pass at the end. Cam York was not even paying attention. He was not even ready for it.
Yeah, I just feel like this was a general lack of execution on the Flyers, right? It's
Yep.
like they have a system that in theory should have been able to compete with this team. We've seen it in the past, right? The last time they
hmm
played, the Flyers were much more equipped to match up. I know it was earlier in the season and things were still kind of settling into place for the season at that time. But that being said, we've seen the Flyers generally play well overall over the past couple of weeks, losing to the much better teams overall. And I don't think the Pens are as good as those other much better teams
I don't
that the
know.
Flyers lost to.
I think the Pens are a real playoff threat. I do, and I've thought it all year. But I'll say this: this one is definitely on the players, not the coach. This was one where, knowing how that last time how it ended with Crosby not even being able to partake in the shootout, and knowing that the Penguins played a bad game last game, they had to have known they had to play a great game because the Penguins were going to come in, looking to play a bounce back game, and they were not up to the task.
They weren't. They were just like a step behind, I
Yep.
think, for a majority of the game. I do think the reason why I think that this Pens team isn't quite as good as some of those other teams they played is they aren't as fast, I think, overall. And that's where, the Flyers can keep up. The Flyers are a slower team. We know that, but they make up for it in other ways a lot of the time. And this time, I think that it just shouldn't have been a factor that they were behind the play so much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, again, you're watching like Travis Konechny. He's struggling out there.
Getting a little
He's
chirpy,
getting chirpy.
maybe.
Like, there's a little frustration there. Vladar definitely got frustrated on that fourth goal. Or was it the
Oh,
fifth?
yes.
Fourth goal, I think it was.
The fourth
Um,
goal, yeah.
yeah, he was frustrated on that. Yeah, this was, Couturier with the holding penalty, Mitchkov with the slashing, which was dumb.
Yeah.
Like a lot of dumb stuff like that. Andre frustrated when his stick broke. You go right after the guy and you hit him and then trip him. Like all that stuff was dumb and born out of frustration.
Yeah, and it just feels like it was unusual for the Flyers this season to be like that. I think that for the most part, they've been able to dig in, and we've seen them, come back from a couple of goals down. They even sort of got a boost from the challenge in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
and getting that goal off the board. It gave them a new lease and a new opportunity that they just could not capitalize on.
No, no. I mean, but again, like I said, this Pens team's different. They added a little more speed. They still have some real skill guys like Eric Carlson on that play on the power play. When you get a
Yeah.
guy like that can pierce through the zone and kind of open things up, we talked about that. Like the Flyers don't have that guy, and that makes a big difference. And it made a big difference on that power play. Well, most of them, but that one especially. So, yeah, I just you look at the game, and this was one where I know they're going to burn the tape and say, okay, we're playing Buffalo, but Buffalo has guys that could score. Like they may not be a great team, but they're playing better than you think right now.
Yeah, I think in some ways I wanna burn the tape, and in some ways I want them to look at certain things on it,
Hmm.
and I think especially on the power play for the Flyers,
Oh,
right?
definitely on the
Bec
power play.
because there were definite times where, there was just, like, mixed signals, like, the puck was getting lost and they had to retreat back.
Yeah.
Even, I think that Emile Andre, who I generally praise, made some blunders on the power play in this
Hmm.
one. I'm still not sure I love the 2 defensemen setup on
No,
that
I
unit.
don't love it. That was
It
good in the
doesn't work.
90s, late 80s, 90s. Doesn't really work now. I mean, Blake Lazat's not a fast guy. If he were a fast guy, he had a breakaway on one of those power plays
He
on a
did.
5-on-3. Like, that was the crazy thing. Like, for a little while on a couple of the 5-on-3s, the Penguins seemed to have more players on the ice, even though they only had three. And that's because the Flyers were fumbling around at times.
Yeah, I thought their positioning on that second 5-on-3 was not effective. They
No,
weren't moving enough. They were just too
no.
stationary in that position. So I do think they need to work on the 5-on-3 overall as well. It was just like not dynamic enough to be successful
Yeah, how often
in,
do you
in
get
there.
like back-to-back 5-on-3s? Like, that doesn't happen very
Almost
often.
never. And the frustrating part was that the first 5-on-3 was good, right?
Right.
And that's why they got the goal because they were able to maneuver so that
Yeah.
they created an open lane for Forster to get the puck net front, and even if it hadn't gone in, Matvei Michkov was literally right there on the doorstep, and he woulda tapped it in if it was a
Right.
little off, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think they know how to do it, they just could not execute in this game, and it just felt like they were kinda in quicksand in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look at the face-off numbers, but like I said, when you're playing a team that's strong in centers, the Penguins are strong in center. This is where the Flyers have some trouble, and there's no question they had trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the Pens had a slight advantage on the faceoffs, but it wasn't too lopsided
Okay.
on this one overall. It really just was the special teams here, the
Yeah.
Flyers, like, very much out hit the Pens in this one, and they
There
were
was one
trying
big
to
stat.
create a physical game,
They were.
but
There
it
was
just
one.
wasn't working.
No, there was one big stat though. The Penguins were 6-1 on takeaways. They had 6 takeaways to the Flyers one. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it wound up being 7-2 in the
Okay.
end, but still, the point stands,
Yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah, this is definitely a game you gotta learn from
Yes.
and fix your mistakes and say, "Okay, we're allowed to have clunkers of games every now and again,
Hmm.
but not this way." not with a
Right.
lack of execution. It's just
Although it would have
unacceptable.
been better to have a clunker against the Sabres for obvious reasons, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, unfortunately, that is, as the broadcast said, the only home game for the Flyers against the Pens that was left. So they
Yeah.
got to get their revenge on the road. Hopefully that will happen in the next calendar year when those games take place.
Yeah,
In
that's
the
a next year
meantime,
problem.
yeah, unfortunately, we got to talk more about the Penguins organization because the Phantoms played Wilkes-Barre Scranton this week, and we will do that coming up next.
NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting's the best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. You can bet the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. Again, preseason I said take the Denver Broncos. They won again. I say take the Denver Broncos. You're getting pretty good odds with them. But if they keep winning, you won't. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, this game moves fast, and so can you.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen of the day, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. On tomorrow's show, we are going to preview the matchup against the Buffalo Sabres, who, as always, are a drama all of their own.
Of course.
Not unexpected. Plus, we're going to answer your mailbag questions, so make sure you get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on any of our socials, or comment over on YouTube. The Lehigh Valley Phantoms had a little bit of a rough week this past week with 2 games, both that ended up in a loss. We did get 1 point out of it in the shootout loss to Laval, but they lost 4-1 to Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And then, of course, like I said, that shootout loss to Laval. And, that drops them to 4th in the division. They had been 3rd in there. And I think this is one of those things where you take your AHL team for what it is in terms of the learning experience for the prospects, right? There's a lot to take away from this weekend that's actually very good from a prospect development perspective, even though you didn't get the results you wanted on the scoreboard, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I didn't expect them to do well, to be honest. I knew this was going to be a tough trip, and it was a tough trip. So, yeah, they'll learn about that, and hopefully they'll fix it.
Yeah, I thought one of the things that was most interesting to me about this is that once again, it showed how much I appreciate John Snowden being the coach of this team, because he talked post game, or like between the 2 games, in an interview with Bob Brochuk about the Wilkes-Barre Scranton game in particular, that he was adamant in that interview that the Phantoms were a better team than Wilkes-Barre Scranton, despite the fact that Wilkes-Barre Scranton is like one of the best teams in the AHL. It was a decisive win, right? And he said, we have all the pieces and tools to be we are just as skilled a team as that Wilkes-Barre Scranton team. We just need to execute better. And he pointed to some very specific plays from that game, where here's the mistake that was made. Here's how we can fix it moving forward. And he spoke in detail about a play that like Ty Murchison had made defensively on one of the goals, right? Where he just got beat, right? And he talked about the decision-making process for these guys and how it's 80% system, 20% on the fly decision-making. And that's what the thing is with young players, is that you have to know when to go with the system and when to pivot, right?
But that's
And
the difference between the Phantoms and Wilkes-Barre, and that's the thing that he was kind of splitting hairs with. They have more experience. Like that's
right, exactly.
And it shows.
Exactly. And that's why he's saying, like, from a skill perspective, we can
Sure.
match them with speed. We can match them with scoring. We can do all these things, but we didn't because of those little differences between the two teams that
Those
we
little
didn't
differences
execute on.
take a while to
Yeah.
to
And I
do
think,
though, to
yeah,
execute correctly. It doesn't happen overnight.
correct. And I think he recognizes that. And
Yeah.
that's where I come back to, this is a learning and developmental league for these guys. And I think, he also talked a lot about Alex Bump and Jacob Gaucher. And, sometimes, they're kind of streaky with their scoring, right?
Mhm.
And that, if you look at some of the stats that those guys had in particular, Alex Bump had 6 shots on goal versus Wilkes-Barre Scranton. He had 7 shots on goal versus Laval, 0 goals to show for it, right? And so that's part of this, like, he's focusing on his offense. It's not coming. And
Right.
that is affecting the other parts of his game,
Right.
where John Snowden is saying he's not developing enough of the complete game yet to where the scoring will just come. Because if
Right.
all
That's
the
what we
other
saw
parts,
last year when he was playing with them for the short time.
exactly. So he has to get all the pieces of his game together, and then the offense will just start clicking because he'll be confident in everything he's doing out there.
Right. But the thing is, and this is why it's going to take this season, could take longer, because in college he didn't have to think about it. The offense came, so there was no
Exactly.
struggle. There's a struggle in this league.
Exactly, and I think that's exactly what John Snowden is saying, and
Yeah.
that's why he's not ready, right? But the fact that, to me, John Snowden knows exactly what's going on with Alex Bump, and he
Mhm.
has a plan to move him forward,
Yeah, I
to
think that's
bring
fair.
his game together, and it's not there yet, but that's okay. Like, it's just part of this development process.
Right. But what's John's plan to get the defense to take fewer penalties? Because
Well,
it's too many.
that's another topic, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I think he feels the same way about Jacob Gaucher, right? A little bit streaky on the
Mhm.
scoring, has to bring his defensive and
Sure.
full ice game into better focus,
Okay.
then the scoring will come,
Right.
right? So I think he really sees those two almost as equals in a way.
Yeah, I don't think
That
they are, but I get it. At that
you
level,
know,
maybe.
yeah, it's in terms of where they are developmentally. I
Right.
think Alex Bump, we know, has a higher ceiling for
Right.
sure, but as far as where they are developmentally, they're in very similar
That's fine.
positions right
Yeah.
now. And again, that's kind of what I appreciate about John Snowden,
Mhm.
that he just understands that level of detail, and he's looking at the X's and O's, and he's talking about it and saying, "See, look at this mistake he made. I know why that happened, and
Right.
I know the path to fix it."
Right.
And it's just so refreshing to hear, you know?
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, he's a cerebral guy for sure.
Yeah. Now, you did mention the penalty situation, right? And I think that there's a couple of things going on there, right? They do need to stay out of the box. It's been a problem this season. Too many.
More than this year though. This has been like a problem with a lot of these guys for multiple years. Different
Yes.
coaches.
Yeah. But I think, as a team overall, it's just been like brutal
Yeah.
for the Phantoms perspective here,
And it does
because
affect the goaltending. Like if you just kind of drop in and say, you see the 4 goals in the games, you're like, oh, the goaltending's been bad. But they're on the kill a lot.
they are. They are, and it's like, it's not helpful to them. But
Right.
I also think that, it's derailed them, right? When
Yes.
they are, like, trying to come back in a game, for instance, right? And then they give up a penalty, and now it's gone the other way for them, and it did happen in that game against Laval, right? Where they were down
Yes.
3-1 and they fought back and they got a 5-on-3 power play. They were
Yeah.
able to score, right? And that was a whole thing. But I do think, the PK is a little bit of an issue here.
Yep.
And, the last minute goal from Sammy Blais, that tied it up for
Who's
Laval
basically
was
an NHLer, so yeah.
correct, but it was also a 6-on-5 goal for Laval
Right.
because they
Right.
finally pulled Jacob Fowler in that game, right?
Right.
So the thing about the PK for me here is that they need to react better on the penalty kill when the call is controversial. I think they felt hosed in both
Okay.
games by at least one call, right? That they felt was a bad call, and they had to go on the PK, and they gave up goals on both of those penalty kills.
Yeah.
And that's a maturity thing.
Yeah.
Like, these guys, and even with like the veterans who got angry about it, and Anthony Richard, we're going to get into Anthony Richard in the next segment because who boy, but like
Yeah, but it doesn't set a good example for the younger guys because it's like you can't get
no,
frustrated.
that was a separate situation where he didn't get a call that he wound up getting,
No,
and that
that's
led
fine.
to the 5-on-3. But
Right.
I think that, yeah, both times where the call didn't really go their way and they had to go on a PK, they allowed a goal on the ensuing penalty kill. And that's the thing they have to get together
Yeah.
and really tie up that loose end on the penalty kill, and then just stay out of the box more because
But
it's
like I
kind of
said,
a
this has
mess.
been 2 different coaches, 2 different years. This has been a constant thing. This is one thing that John Snowden so far is failing at. It's the one thing he's failing at.
Yeah, I would say so. It's it is a
And
struggle
it's
for
a lot
them.
of the same guys, like Hunter McDonald takes too many penalties.
Yeah, I mean, he does. I think he does overall.
We know Garrett Wilson does, but like he's part of that is, the aggressiveness, whatever. That's fine, but defensemen can't go in the box as much as Hunter McDonald does.
Yeah,
And Murchison too.
what's interesting to me is that, the Phantoms are in the top 5 teams of terms of time shorthanded
Right.
this season so far. We've talked about that. Laval is the top team in the league. So we were going to get some penalties in this game no matter
Yeah, they were
what, right?
coming.
Yeah. So, but again, I do think it's just
What saves
something.
Laval is they have Jacob Fowler.
Yeah. Yeah. And it did. It absolutely did. So I think all of that is kind of interesting. But we do have some other guys we want to talk about, including Anthony Richard. And I want to talk about the vets versus the prospects a little bit, about this week's performance. We are going to do that coming up next. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. And that is why I've been using Drip Drop. It's doctor developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. I work out a lot. I like using Drip Drop as part of my daily routine. I'll mix a packet in the morning into my water before the gym. Just make sure I have the right level of energy to power through a spin class or a weights day. My go-to flavor is the zero sugar strawberry lemonade. It's become my secret weapon for staying hydrated, which is so important. Drip Drop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard and keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. All right. So I think this is a conversation we have started last week a little bit about the veterans and the support players, so to speak, versus the prospects that the Flyers are trying to develop here. And I think, we're kind of now in week 2 of some of these sort of veterans or AHLers kind of taking on the lion's share of the scoring for the team, while the prospects are kind of maybe hitting a little bump in the road. Like, I hate saying that with Alex Bump around, but
Yeah.
um, you know, but like I said, he didn't get on the board. Alexei Gendron didn't get on the board. Devin Kaplan continues to struggle. Denver Barkey, despite having a really great week, the week before, only an assist against Laval. And this one, although I thought he had actually a pretty good game in that one. Overall, he just didn't get on the board. But, Jacob Gaucher, we talked about. Ethan Sampson is still working his way back. We talk about Hunter McDonald struggling a little bit. Ty Murchison got beat on that play, right? So we have all these prospects that are just kind of in a little bit of a dip here as they're adjusting to the system, and as the league is kind of getting up to full speed. They're having a little bit of a lull in scoring, but the veterans are keeping up their end of the bargain here, like some of these older guys. And so Anthony Richard is one of them, right? So he had the only goal in the Wilkes-Barre Scranton game. He had 5 shots on goal in that game. He had a goal and 2 assists against Laval. There was this huge controversy thing near the end of the second period, and that's where like he got hit and was bleeding and then was like yelling at the ref, and that's what got them the 5-on-3 that they scored
Okay.
on, right? And then
Mhm.
Richard scored later in the game. I think it was very much a revenge game for him.
Yeah.
Um, and he played very well, which is a good thing. And we know he's like a call up option
Right.
for the Flyers if they need it. So I appreciate that he's doing well. Carl Grundstrom scored against Laval. Christian Cairo continues to perform incredibly for this team
Yeah.
overall. He had a goal and an assist in that Laval game. He's the one that scored that 5-on-3 goal on
Yeah, I
that
mean,
power
Laval is a
play.
pretty good defender, so
Yeah. Yeah. So I just think like it just once again brings up the conversation of, is this okay? And for how long is this okay? That like the AHL guys or the veterans are the ones kind of holding down the fort right now.
I mean, it's not ideal, but that is why you have them around. In another 20 games, if it's still like that, then you're like, the other guy's got to pick it up. So, but right now, it's okay.
Yeah, I think so. I want to keep an eye on things, and we'll talk about the schedule, here in a minute. But
Yeah.
there's going to be some opportunities upcoming, and to kind of redeem themselves in some ways, or for the
Right.
prospects to kind of really show that what I talked about in the last segment about the learning and the
To
X's and
prove
O's
you
of it.
wrong, to prove
Yeah.
Rachel wrong. Yeah.
Well, or to prove
I'm
John
kidding.
Snowden right,
Right.
more than anything,
Yeah.
here, but that, they do have it. It's just a matter of the developmental process and the learning, and we'll see it come to
Yeah.
fruition here, what the coaches there and player development team is working on with these
Yeah,
guys.
that's why it's a shame they really mostly play on the weekend, because like it's hard to have these practices and then you wait and then all of a sudden there's like a flood of games. Like you wish they were better spaced out, but it's just not the
Sometimes,
case.
yeah. Yeah, occasionly they get like the Wednesday, Friday, Saturday
'Cause
schedule, which
sometimes
is
when things go off the rails, like you're playing back to back and 2 of 3, it's harder. It's harder to get that point across.
No, you're absolutely right. I think so. But they do have these practice sessions
Yeah.
there. We'll see what happens. I am genuinely curious to see if John Snowden is going to mess with the lineup in any way. He hasn't really done it because I think he was trying to build that chemistry there. So
Right.
we've had like the Peterson line with Bump and Barkey on it. I would still keep that one together.
Mhm.
But like I might mess around with some of the other lines, and maybe put, Jacob Gaucher on the line with Grundstrom
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
Gendron,
Yeah.
just adjust things a little bit to maybe kickstart some of these other guys. But I do think it's important to keep Bump and Barkey together for now to see if they
Yeah,
can
I would
learn
too.
as like a unit, right?
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Definitely keep those 2 together.
Yeah, the other thing too is that the goaltending continues to be real solid.
Mhm.
Even though these games were losses, I don't think you could put either game on the goaltenders here. I think there were key defensive mishaps that led to
Yeah.
the goals, especially against Wilkes-Barre Scranton for sure. And and again, the game against Laval was kind of a mess because of all the penalties.
I know what
And
you're gonna say.
yeah. So at any rate, the Phantoms do have 3 games this week to look forward to in terms of how, we can see if this is going to work. And they're going to have to mess with the lineups a little bit just because of that, right?
Yeah.
So we have a game Friday at Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So that's going to be a huge game.
Yeah, that'll
Can
be
John
interesting to
Snowden
see
be
what
right?
they've learned. Yeah.
Exactly. And then they have a home game against Utica, which should be a good breather for them, but you still have to show up and play,
You
right?
do.
And then they travel to Hershey on Sunday. So it's a big weekend. There's a lot of moving pieces and parts. And I do think that that'll be a good kind of checkpoint after this upcoming week, right? Just to be like, okay, like where are we now? Where are we in the
Right.
standings? Like, what do we have to do to continue to be successful?
Yeah, I think right now they're, still better than last year. That's obvious. But there's things to work on. And when they play the better teams, this is where it shows up. And that's a thing. Like that's part of development. And at some
Yep.
point, And again, this is where fans have to understand, like, these guys have to overcome this in the AHL before you just send them up to the NHL. Because these good AHL teams have, guys they send up and down regularly. And that's the difference there in development.
Yeah, and like that's Sammy Blythe for you right there, right on
Exactly.
Laval. Prime
Yeah,
example.
he could
of
be
that.
up in the NHL next week, but you're playing against him today.
Yep. So we're hoping to see more of that from the Phantoms. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We will be talking about Flyers versus Sabres and answering your mailbag questions. So make sure you get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Let us know on any of our socials or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen. Today, for your next listen, check out Locked On NHL Game Night. It's every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. You can get local analysis on a national scale with NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. It's on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.